The whisper in the cell. Kalen walked through the steel hallway with steady steps as the cold lights above buzzed quietly. The walls were gray and smooth. Like everything else in the State Tower, he wore his dark uniform with silver lines that showed. He was a level 4 enforcer. No one dared speak when he passed, not because they feared him, but because that was the law. Silence, order, no emotion. He reached the security wing where the air felt even colder. 2 guards stood outside a cell. They saluted, but he only nodded and stepped inside. The room was small with a glass barrier, and behind it sat the alien girl, hands resting calmly on her lap, eyes glowing, faint blue hair tied back in a strange braid that shimmered with soft silver threads. Her name had not been given. She was found trespassing near a restricted energy zone outside the city fence. No ID, no weapon, just silence and a strange calm. When she was caught, instead of struggling, she looked at the officers and said one line, "Do you feel anything when you hurt others?" Kalen had read the report and ignored the question. Now he was here to see her face to face. Maybe find out what species she was. Maybe crack her calm, because calm in custody meant something was hidden. He stood in front of the glass and pressed the voice button. "Name and origin," he said. The girl looked up slowly, her voice soft but clear. "You can call me Lyra. I came to remind your world of something it forgot." Kalen kept his face straight, not reacting, not blinking. "You crossed a military zone under State Directive 01. Your presence is illegal. Your words mean nothing without emotion." Authorization. Lyra tilted her head as if studying him, then smiled, but it was not a mocking smile. It felt soft, like she pitied him. "Do you even remember the last time you felt something real?" she asked. "I follow protocol," Kalen replied. "Feelings are chemical distractions." She stood now and stepped closer to the glass, not touching it, but close enough that her breath left a faint mist. Her eyes studied his face, not like an enemy, but like someone looking for something. "Saw your eyes when they brought me in," she whispered, "and they were not empty, not yet." Kalen felt something in his chest, a flicker, something like warmth, but pushed it down. He tapped a command on his wrist to log her words and turned to leave. That night, though, as he sat in his room alone, the lights dimmed, the system reading books to him. As it did every night, he found himself not listening. He kept seeing her face, hearing her voice, and that one word, real. The next morning, he delayed the transfer order by marking it for re-evaluation. His assistant AI asked why, but he typed in pending verification and locked the file. He returned to her cell again. "You will answer my questions today," he said. Lyra only looked at him with quiet eyes. Then she said, "Tell me one thing. Kalen, when you were a boy and they took you for training, did they let you cry even on set?" Kalen said nothing. The air between them felt heavy. Lyra sat down again, folding her legs beneath her. "Where I come from, feelings were not crimes," she said. "They were sacred. When we lost our home, it was not because we were weak, it was because we trusted too much." In silence. "You are not under trial here," Kalen replied. "You are under containment." Your words change nothing. "Then why do you keep coming back?" she asked. He had no answer for that. Over the next days, Kalen found himself returning again and again. She spoke little, but when she did, it stayed in his mind. She described things he never thought about, stars that pulsed with memory, rivers that sang when someone cried near them, birds that mourned their lost ones in silence, but still waited for them every dawn. He called it nonsense in front of her, but inside something was shifting. He began skipping the system readings at night, choosing instead to sit alone in quiet, trying to remember if he ever cried as a boy. He could not. Then one evening during routine health scan, the system flagged his heart rate for irregular emotional spike. The message blinked red on his wall, but he quickly erased it before the central servers caught. I knew he was changing. He felt it in the way he looked at his reflection, now as if seeing a stranger with tired eyes and something behind them, something human. The next morning, as he entered her cell again, she stood before him, not speaking for a long time. Then finally she said, "Break the rules with me." Kalen blinked. "What?" Lyra stepped forward slowly. "You are not a machine," she said. "You feel it. I see it. Stop pretending this system saved you. It stole you." Kalen stepped back a bit, his breath unsteady. The glass was gone today. They allowed him inside the cell since she was not considered violent. He now felt how warm the room was, or maybe it was just her voice. The door opened behind him. Another officer entered with a report, and Callan quickly stepped out, telling the man he was done here for today. But he was not done, not with her, not with whatever was breaking inside him, not with the way her words stayed in the air, like music he never heard before that night. He sat on his bed, unable to sleep. The window showed the blinking lights of drones above, but all he could think about was the way she looked at him, not with fear, not with hate, but with something else, something like trust. He whispered her name once under his breath, Lyra, and for the first time in his life, he felt afraid, not of her, not of punishment, but of what would happen if he never went back to that cell again. Protocol cracks. The next morning, Callan walked past the other officers without looking at anyone. His boots made soft echoes in the empty hallway, his thoughts louder than the alarms that sometimes rang through these walls. He told himself it was just another visit, just another routine check on the prisoner, but deep down he knew it was no. Opened the cell room and stepped inside. Lyra was already standing near the far wall, as if waiting for him. Her eyes looked tired but calm, her voice soft when she said, "You came back." Alan nodded once without words, then looked around the room, making sure no recording device was active. He had hacked the wall monitor the night before, disabling the direct feed to Central. Now it only showed static when viewed from outside. "You are risking everything," she said quietly. He did not respond to that. Instead, he sat down across from her and placed his data chip on the table between them, then looked at her and asked, "Why me?" Lyra smiled just a little. "Because you listened even when you were trained not to." He frowned at that, remembering his first day in the State Academy, the way they taught them to ignore crying, to turn away from pain, to erase dreams, because dreams were dangerous. Dreams meant feelings, and feelings meant disorder. She reached out her hand and placed something on the table beside the chip. It was a small crystal, barely the size of a coin, faintly glowing blue. He looked at it carefully, then looked back at her. "What is this?" "It responds to emotion," she said. "Not just mine. It reflects life and connection. Our people used it to guide decisions. In times of conflict, it would only glow when truth and feeling met in harmony." Callan reached for it slowly. The crystal flickered weakly under his touch, then faded back to dim. "You have been disconnected for a long time," she said gently. "It will take time." He did not move his hand from the crystal. Instead, he stared at it, as if trying to feel something inside himself, something he had buried long ago. That evening in his private quarters, Callan accessed old files from childhood, encrypted memory logs placed by the state. When he was young, there was one clip of his mother holding him for a moment before the officers came and took him to the training camp. He had no memory of that hug, only the cold of the transport seat. He closed the file and sat in silence. The next day, he delayed Lyra's transfer again, marking her status as under observation. The command unit questioned the delay, but he replied with a long list of invented medical checks, then locked the report with level 4 clearance. His hands shook for a second after hitting send. Lyra noticed the change in him when he entered again. She offered no words, just opened her palm and revealed the crystal once more. This time it glowed faintly as he stepped closer. "You are healing," she said with a soft smile. He sat beside her and for a moment allowed himself to close his eyes. He spoke then, with a voice lower than usual. "I used to draw pictures when I was young. I was told to stop because imagination led to weakness, but I remember one. I drew a field with a yellow sky and 2 people holding hands." Lyra leaned slightly closer, her voice a whisper. "What did you feel when you made that drawing?" He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Safe." "Then that feeling still lives inside you," she said gently. Sat in silence after that. No questions, no instructions, just quiet understanding. But far above in the command tower, red alerts had started to blink quietly on certain screens. The biometric tracking systems had detected irregularities in Callan's daily pattern: heart rate changes, sleep disruption, emotional spikes. His file was marked for internal review. The next morning, a message appeared on his screen, short and cold: "Officer Callan, your performance metrics require recalibration. Report for mental scan within 48 hours. stared at the message for a long time, then erased it before locking his system and heading back to the lower cells when he saw Lyra again. He told her about the scan. She looked worried for the first time since arriving. "They will find the changes," she said. "If they look deeply, they will know then. I cannot let them look." He replied. She reached for the crystal again and placed it between them. It glowed brighter than before. "You still have a choice," she said. "Even now you can forget this." He shook his head slowly. "I do not want to forget this even if I should." Lyra's eyes held something like pride, then something like sorrow. "If they come for you, will you fight?" He looked at her and said, "Not for me, but for what I found, because for the first time I do not feel hollow." That night, while reviewing his route logs, Callan erased all records of his last 3 visits to Lyra, then uploaded a fake report about her being unresponsive and unstable. He encrypted the files and backed them up on a personal drive hidden inside his boot. At the same time, he ordered the surveillance system around the cell block into maintenance mode, which gave him full privacy for the next 40 hours. When he walked into her room again, she was sitting on the floor, eyes closed, humming a soft tune he had never heard before. "What is that?" he asked. "A song from my world," she replied. "It is what we sing when 2 hearts begin to beat together." Callan sat down across from her, not as an officer, not as a guard, but as someone slowly waking up. "And what happens when the song ends?" he asked. Lyra opened her eyes and said, "The song ends. It means one of them has stopped listening." He nodded slowly, then looked at the crystal between them, which now glowed without being touched. She smiled and said, "You are listening now, marked as defective." Callan walked down the corridor with his mind clouded by thoughts. The kind of thoughts that once felt dangerous, now felt necessary. The halls of the tower were quiet, but inside him a storm had started. It was not fear, it was not anger, it was something he could not name yet. It burned gently in his chest like a slow fire. He reached Lyra's cell and opened the door without waiting. She was already standing, as if she sensed he was coming. Her eyes met his without surprise, only calm acceptance. "They know," he said. Lyra took a slow breath and nodded once. "They will come for both of us soon." Callan looked down at the small glowing crystal, now sitting on the center of the table. "Its light brighter than ever before. I delayed the scan as long as I could," he said, "but now the central AI is tracking everything, my steps, my sleep, my pulse." Lyra stepped closer and placed her hand gently over the crystal. It responded instantly, casting a soft blue light across the room. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Callan hesitated, but then nodded. "Yes, I do." "Then I will show you the truth," she said. The folds of her clothing, she took out a small device, not much larger than a coin, and placed it beside the crystal. The 2 objects pulsed together. A soft hum filled the room, and suddenly an image appeared in the air. Above them, a field of stars, a broken planet, and a group of beings standing hand in hand beneath a sky that shimmered with waves of emotion. "This was my home," she said. "It was destroyed not by war, not by sickness, but by silence." Our leaders began removing emotion. They said it made us weak. They said feeling was chaos, but they were wrong. Emotion was the only thing that made us alive. The image shifted, showing her people slowly turning gray, their eyes dull, their voices silent, their movements like machines. "Thought order would save us," she continued, "but without love we forgot why we existed at all." Callan watched without blinking, something deep inside him cracking open as he saw the end of a world that once danced with feeling. Image faded and silence returned, but it was not empty silence. It was the kind that lingers after something sacred has been shared. Callan reached for the crystal and held it with both hands. This time the light was steady, warm, alive. "They will say I am defective," he said. "They will erase me from the system." Lyra stepped forward and touched his arm. "Then be defective," she whispered, "because this is not failure, this is awakening." A sound echoed from the hallway, a sharp metallic click, then another. Callan's eyes widened. He moved to the door and checked the monitor. 2 purifier units were entering the floor, full armor, armed systems active. Their presence meant only one thing: capture or elimination. "They are here," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "We have minutes, maybe less." Lyra nodded. I am ready. He opened the side wall of the cell, revealing a maintenance tunnel he had unlocked it days ago, but kept it secret until now. They stepped inside and sealed the wall behind them. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but they moved fast. Callan in front, Lyra close behind. Where are we going? She asked. There's a relay station on the old skyport, he replied. They shut it down years ago, but the uplink tower still works. We can send a signal from there, maybe reach someone beyond Earth, and then we run. The tunnel opened into a back corridor that led to the outer platform. Callan pulled his cloak tighter around his uniform and handed one to Lyra as well. The wind was sharp against their faces, but they kept moving, silent and swift. Behind them, the tower lights turned red. Drones began scanning the area. Orders echoed through the comms, but Callan's tracker was disabled. He had crushed it under his boot an hour ago. They reached the edge of the platform and slipped into an old service car. Callan powered it with a bypass chip, and the vehicle hummed to life. Slow but steady, they drove into the outskirts where the city lights faded and the sky grew wider inside the car. Lyra leaned back against the seat. Her eyes closed. The air was better for her, not perfect but not poison like the city. I am sorry, Callan said. I should have done this sooner. You did it when you were ready, she replied. That is all that matters. Hours later, they arrived at the base of the relay station. It stood like a forgotten giant. Metal vines wrapped around it, rust covering its bones, but the core signal light still blinked faintly. They climbed to the top, avoiding loose cables and broken panels. Once inside, Callan activated the console and connected the crystal device to the uplink. A soft pulse echoed as the system recognized something ancient. And Aliena code is transmitting, he said. Do you think anyone will hear it? They will if they still remember how to feel, she said with a soft smile. Callan turned toward her, his hand reaching for hers. Their fingers touched, and the crystal between them flared so bright it lit the entire room. I never knew I could feel this way, he said, barely above a whisper. And now that you do, she replied. What will you do with? I looked at her, his voice steady. Protect it with everything I have. Suddenly the tower shook. A sound like thunder rolled across the metal. They looked out and saw the purifier ship descending, black and sharp, like a blade cutting through the night. They found us, he said. Then we hold on to this moment, she whispered, and we do not let go. The chase beyond Earth. Callan and Lyra hurried through the dark corridors of the old relay station. The heavy metal doors groaned as they sealed behind them. Their breaths were fast and shallow. The air was cold and smelled of rust and dust outside. The storm of sirens and flashing red lights warned of the purifier units closing in. They reached a service elevator, and Callan pressed the button for the maintenance decks below. The lift shuddered, then dropped slowly like a stone sinking in water. Lyra held her arms tight around herself, her eyes flickering with pain. Atmosphere here was still harsh for her alien body. The air was thin and the toxins faint, but every moment outside would only make her weaker. Callan felt a pang of guilt for dragging her into this mess. We need to find the portal, he said. Through gritted teeth, there's a deep orbit station where others like you gather, resistance that still believes in feelings and freedom. Lyra nodded, struggling to stay upright, her glowing eyes dimming. You will make it, he said, helping her lean on his shoulder. We have to. Suddenly, the elevator jolted to a stop. Lights flickered and alarms blared. The purifiers had tracked their signal and forced a lockdown. Callan cursed softly and pried open the emergency hatch. They climbed out into a narrow tunnel filled with broken cables and flashing warning lights. The air felt thick with electricity. The sound of distant footsteps echoed louder. They had no time. Ahead was a heavy blast door with a control panel flickering weakly. Callan scanned the code on the crystal device and placed it on the reader. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber with strange machines, cables looping into a circular frame, a portal generator. Lyra's face lit up for the first time in hours. This is it, she whispered. We can escape through here, but it needs 2 people to sync emotionally to activate the jump. Callan stepped inside the circle and reached for Lyra's hand. She grasped it tightly, though her body trembled with exhaustion. They closed their eyes and focused on the crystal between them. It began to glow. Brighter pulses of light flowing up the machines hum into life. The portal shimmered like a window into the starry void. Suddenly, the chamber door slammed open. A group of purifier soldiers rushed in, guns raised. Callan pushed Lyra behind him, drawing his sidearm. The sound of laser fire filled the room. Sharp and bright. Callan fired carefully, disabling one soldier's weapon. The others moved quickly, surrounding the portal, but Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "Stop. You do not have to do this," she said. But the soldiers fired again, forcing Callan to cover her with his body. The crystal flared in response, casting a shield of light that deflected the shots, but it drained rapidly. Lyra's strength was fading fast. One soldier fired a charged blast that shattered the portal console. The machines sparked. Indeed, Callan screamed in frustration. The portal was broken, and the purifiers were closing in, but Lyra held up the crystal, glowing fiercely. Even without the machines, it pulsed with raw energy between them, a force that defied the state's control. Callan took her hand and felt warmth flood his veins, courage replacing fear. The soldiers hesitated, as if afraid to touch the light, and slowly retreated, pulling back under the glow of the crystal. Callan and Lyra stepped through the portal's fading shimmer, holding tightly to each other as the world dissolved around them. They landed hard on a rocky surface, under a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. The air was thin but breathable, and around them a group of figures waited quietly, watching. One stepped forward, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes like liquid gold. She smiled softly and spoke, "Welcome to the Ember Ring, a sanctuary for those who choose love over law." Callan looked at Lyra and then at the strangers, his heart pounding with hope and fear. "Is this really freedom?" he asked. The woman nodded. "This is where you begin again, where feelings are not crimes, but strength." Lyra squeezed Callan's hand and whispered, "We are home, where hearts remain." Callan stood with Lyra under the wide stars of the Ember Ring, a place alive with colors and sounds unlike anything he had ever seen before. The air was cool and fresh, as if the galaxy itself was breathing with life. Around them, the people moved with quiet purpose, faces showing hope and freedom. The silver-haired woman who welcomed them stepped forward once more. "Here you will find others who have chosen feeling over fear," she said. "This is a new world where love is strength and the heart guides the way." Callan looked at Lyra, her eyes bright despite the journey. She smiled at him gently and said, "We made it." The pain and fear from their past felt distant now, but the memory still lived inside their hearts. Callan reached out and held her hand tightly. "I was taught to fear love," he whispered, "but now I know it was the only thing worth breaking for." They walked through the colony, which was built inside a giant asteroid. Gardens and homes woven into the rock walls. Children played, laughter filling the air, and elders told stories of the past and dreams of the future. Callan felt the weight of his uniform fall away, replaced by the lightness of belonging. He watched as Lyra shared stories with the others about her home planet, her people, and the dangers they faced. She told them how the state had taken everything but could not take their hope, how love had survived even in the darkest times. Days passed and Callan trained with the others, learning to listen to his own feelings, learning to trust the warmth that had once scared him. He met people from many worlds, humans and aliens alike, who had escaped the cold grip of control to find a new family here. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the Ember Ring, Callan stood with Lyra, watching the stars. They held each other, closed, their hearts beating in sync for the first time. "I never thought I could feel this much," he said softly. Lyra smiled, her fingers tracing his cheek. "Love is not weakness, it is the greatest power there is," she replied. "But the state is still out there," Callan said quietly. "They will never stop hunting us. Then we will be ready," he said, looking into her eyes. "Together we will protect this new world and the hearts that live here." Callan knew their fight was only beginning, but with Lyra by his side and the Ember Ring behind them, he felt ready to face anything. The colony lights twinkled like stars, mirroring the sky above, as hope burned bright in their souls. The first time in his life, Callan was free to love, free to feel, and free to be human. And that was a victory no law could take away. The end.